my relatives, welcome once again to Eagle and Condor. This is Tony Gonzalez, your host today, here on The Rock on Alcatraz. It's Indigenous Peoples Day today, Monday, October 13, 2025. And this marks 533 years of Indian resistance to colonization throughout the Americas, indeed around the world. My relatives, 1492, 2025, 533 years of struggle, my relatives. And all across the country, here in the United States, over 11 states have declared Indigenous Peoples Day or wordings to that effect other than what we had recognized before as Christopher Columbus Day. That's no more. He's been exposed. There no more terrorism, no more tourism. You know, as Indian people are reclaiming their destiny once again. And I have to say that Berkeley here in California, People's Republic of Berkeley, last Saturday, October 11th, had their 33rd annual powwow, which was really outstanding. And I say that because Berkeley was the first city in the entire country of the United States, 1992, that they declared Indigenous Peoples Day. So now over 100 cities across the state, over 11 states, as I said earlier, have declared Indigenous Peoples Day. And here today on The Rock, I've invited, because I saw Laulani Kitio from Hawaii. Maybe Oahu, we'll get that straightened out, from what island. Yeah. And here on my left, my good brother as well, Lico Martin, I've known for several decades. I've invited them both. They sang a couple of songs here on The Rock to our relatives. But Laulani, please, if you would reintroduce yourself and tell us how things are going on the island that you are from.
Well, my name is Laulani, and I'm from Kahalu'u, Oahu. And how things are going. You know, when the going is very hard, that's when the people rise up, and when the strength of the people and the land can really be seen. So that's where we're headed right now. A big issue in Hawaii right now is militarization. We're in a difficult position with leases that the U.S. military is trying to renew, that they have done such a terrible job in preparing for, that even the State Department of Land and Natural Resources rejected their EIS. And so now they're trying to just override this whole state and the people, and discussing either direct negotiations or taking with the governor or taking the land. So we're preparing for whatever it takes to make sure that that doesn't happen. And meanwhile, there's also great military expansion as the United States and China square off against each other. We are right in the middle of that. You know, we're on the front line of that warfare, and they are preparing docks for nuclear-armed submarines that are on my island, in the sacred area of Pu'uloa, which is home to our very sacred shark protector goddess Ka'ahupahau, and we need to protect her home and call for the return of these deities, as well as return of the people to care for the lands and care for the sacred places of these deities, and to join together with all of the other indigenous peoples who are also fighting these battles and taking care of that land, because it's coming to the point where we're all facing this terrible destruction of the earth that we live on and the waters that we drink. And that destruction, as we know, cannot sustain life. So we, as the indigenous peoples defending that land, defending that water, are the hope for humanity. And the way that we're going to do that is by joining together. As our struggles come to a head, when we stand up for one another, when we are here for one another, when we go to places and connect with one another, we are weaving the great net that will cast off that very heavy, wrong blanket of colonization that has been oppressing all of us and killing our planet.
And Laulani, I just wanted to see the struggle that was going on the Big Island over the telescopes at Mauna Kea.
So that's been...
Is there an update on that? There's 13 telescopes up there already.
Yeah, there are actually a lot more than 13, but there are 13 that they count, right? And so... the struggle over the 30-meter telescope, the TMT, is not over. So what happened this past year was that the National Science Foundation announced, as its director was leaving, that they would not be funding TMT. So everybody's been celebrating that, which is wonderful, and we should celebrate it because it was a great win that took a lot of work. But also, it's not over. Congress recently passed a budget bill in which they directed the National Science Foundation directly to fund the 30-meter telescope. And they're holding their funding hostage, as they did in 2023. So we're up against that battle all over again, and people should be aware that we need to stay ready and we need to stay alert and we need to stay on top of that, because we're dealing with late stage capitalism here and a crumbling empire, and that empire is not going to be pretty as it is in its throes of self-destruction. And right now, that's what we're seeing with the 30-meter telescope. It's not going to die easily, and they're not going to just give up and walk away, as it would be wonderful if they did, but that's not happening at this time. And we do need everyone to stay aware of that, because the roots of that telescope are here in California, with the University of California specifically, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, with the Caltech and others. So California is very important in our struggle to protect Mauna Kea from the 30-meter telescope, the largest. It would have been the largest telescope in the world, but we stalled it so long that they built a couple other larger ones in the meantime. But it's a very, very destructive and wrong telescope that the indigenous people absolutely have not consented to in any way, shape, or form. And we need to be that filter for everything that is built upon our lands. Our consent is what makes those things right. And if that consent is lacking, there is a reason for it. It is because that thing does not belong upon the land.
Oh, thank you very much for that update, Leolani. And Liko Martin here on my left, my brother. We've been together a long time. And Liko, I remember about the time we met with our late great friend, Kawaipuna Prijin, who led a lot of the leadership struggle, took it into the international arena. But some of the struggles during the late 70s, early 80s was the struggle there in Ko'a'alave, the bombing of the island, the sacred island. And since then, it's stopped. But during that time at Ko'a'alave, Japan, the United States, and a couple of other countries would use that as a bombing practice. And you came out with a lot of good songs as well during that time. What can you tell us, Liko, update about that struggle in particular?
I remember on the fifth landing at Kaho'olawe, And first of all, I'd like to give greetings, Tony,
Oh,
to all of our Ohana here, our family here, Mokuhonunui, I call Big Turtle Island, and from all the people of Temuananui Okiva, the people of Polynesia, and
oh,
to recognize the circumnavigation of the Hokulea, to send out and raise the flags and the consciousness of our migration patterns and the things of our family. And internationally, Kaho'olawe, on the fifth landing, which I was on, which after that the pressure was big enough to stop it. I wrote a song in the jail when they had to bring in the military to take us off the island, and it was entitled "The Greatest Picture Show." Here it is. This is the greatest picture show. Now it's up another atom, says the sergeant to the captain. Somebody landed on the balmy island. They said it was the native. They said that they were crazy, blowing up the bombs, trying to chase the Navy away. But they're not chased away. They're full on. They're coming now. But our international, what Kauai Puna started with you, with the International Indian Treaty Council, is still a place where we need to go, Tony. And I don't affiliate with any specific group. I'm a part of the whole of the Hawaiian people, and we are part of the whole of humanity. And I was watching yesterday the Nobel Peace Prize went to the struggle in Venezuela. We have lost people in our soil, but the importance of reminding the world of the treaty violation. This is where Kauai Puna was last at. Okay, this is where he went under the International Treaty Council. He was on the cusp of having the United Nations do a treaty violation study. Okay, and this is where what needs to be. We go where we can go, where we know we have ground to stand, and accountability is our issue now with foreign relations. People of the world need to understand that we're indigenous. Yes, I think all people have indigenous roots somewhere, maybe some in various places.
that's right.
Okay, so we are united in humanity, but under that distinction, in Hawaii particularly, when there was this so-called apology in 1993 by the Congress, there wasn't an apology. They actually made it worse. Instead of you can be a slave if you want to, they just threw the net around everybody and says, now you can really be slave. Now you're really subject to us. So that indigenous thing, they've sort of tried to sweep away all of our elevated consciousness that took us to actually have constitutional law, courts. Okay, the Hawaiian Kingdom was never overthrown. It was usurped by the sugar planters. Welcome to the plantation of Hawaii. Welcome to Nazi Germany. Welcome to Namibia, South Africa, when you get off at the airport in Honolulu. That's what the world needs to understand. Okay? And so now, because of this pressure, many people migrated. Now we have maybe 400,000 or 500,000 Hawaiian people who have had to leave. It wasn't a matter. There was no jobs. There was no plan for any jobs. We'll give them an apology and bring in the settlers and let's wipe them out and push them into the corner. That's why there are so many Pacific Islander people here. Okay, like the gentleman that we met when we first came, Fala. Okay, raised up Samoan Hawaiian, raised away from Hawaii because, the settler, one of the Chumash elders. Described, he kind of put it in perspective. He says, if it was 500 and so many years, which you articulated, we're about like 200 years into it. So you can imagine that in Hawaii, they're pushing us off. We can. Where I grew up at the foot of Diamond Head in Waikiki, they only had 2 hotels. I could go down to the beach in the park. Now, if I go there and I sit down, I will get arrested. So this is what it is. So that's why our people have come away. But the source of our problem, we have the same source of the problem, and that is that global mentality that might makes right. and might does not make right.
And Liko, excuse me, you mentioned the apology bill. That was by the then President
Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
Well, we're going to be.
And
yeah.
when was the overthrow?
There
was
was
that
never
18
an overthrow.
Oh,
That's the
okay.
thing. That's the myth.
The Queen.
Yes. See, what occurred, Tony, is very important to understand. The apology bill, they said, we apologize for the overthrow. There was never an overthrow. Because Hawaiians stood down. Queen Liliuokalani went to the Law of Nations, went to the Constitution of the United States, and said, I will yield conditionally until the time that our issue is brought to the United States, rather than get it on with the sugar planters. Therefore, they could say that we were conquered. We have never been conquered. Wisely, we're still here. If we had shot it out with them, I probably would not be sitting here. And Hawaii would be like, Hong Kong already, which is kind of like going in that direction. Okay. We were never conquered. It's a usurpation that is still continuing. 1959, the Congress, without having a treaty of annexation and having no boundaries, no metes and bounds, just said, we're going to impose another provisional government because I think it'd be better. They need our protection.
And took the island out of the, what is it, non-treaty
they removed
territories?
it from Chapter 11 of the United Nations Charter, the Declaration on Non-Self-Governing Territories. And that is an important issue for us. And it's an important issue because we need to revisit it. That was scandalous. They took Alaska and Hawaii out. And this is where we have to hold our what can we use? And that is one of the things. That's why Kawaipuna and the International Indian Treaty Council and the treaty-based things, just like with Magritte versus Oklahoma. When Magritte versus Oklahoma took place, that's our position in the Supreme Court of the United States. But that's their court. That's the Supreme Court of the United States, and it can be very functional to start a fire in their kitchen. Okay, that you have a constitutional crisis here. The federal constitution in Hawaii and Alaska and every place else is not a benefactor. It is a sword which is coming to destroy our fundamental human rights.
Oh. And excuse me, Liko, I wanted to Laulani, maybe there's a new TV episode that's out now called Chief of War.
Yeah.
Laulani, do you have any comments about that? I forget the actor's name again. Very
Jason
popular.
Momoa.
Yeah.
Jason Momoa. Yeah, it's definitely our people are watching it for sure. It's great to see the stories portrayed, even though there are many differences with the actual history, as happens in television.
Yes,
right.
yes.
So there is a lot of fictionalizing, but there are a lot of truths too. So it's very interesting to see that and to see that era, because that was the time when the people were starting to come over from Europe and America and with their guns, and how that affected people. So I think that part is pretty well documented.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, that version there of Kamehameha, and uniting the islands, and for war and battle. I don't know what your take is on that TV episode, Liko.
Yeah. Well, it definitely
It puts Hawaii on the map. A lot of people watch it.
It puts Hawaii on the map, and actually, culturally, since the time of Kaho'olawe, we're in our fifth decade of our Renaissance in Hawaii. Okay. And during that Renaissance, now we have language which is spoken, and you have culture, and you have all these various aspects. And one of them was the passing down of the arts of war, okay, to many of the groups, and some of the masters. They passed on the arts of war the Lua fighting. Okay, and so within our societies now, we have traditional fighters. Put your guns down, one on one. Okay, and they're actually becoming now. Where is our land? Now that we know we have our traditional part, the fight that we're having is the focus has been to keep us back. You know, we'll give them a little, let them learn their language, but on their land, well, we got to watch there. So one of the things is that is affecting everywhere. It's been when they have come through to take charge of our historic places and our burials. Okay, here, consistently destroying sacred sites and everything. That this is one of our problems across the board. So, like with the chapter 11 Declaration, non-self-governing territories, what's occurring in the territories, and being able to. So back in Hawaii, back to the movie again, the focus of the battle is the peace that Queen Kalani set in place when she did not fight the settlers. She did not bite to that. Instead, she yielded to the authority of the United States as a responsibility of a treaty obligation, treaty of protection. That is what we have to yank on and say, here, the treaty of protection, we're bringing you the story. And this is because what we need, war, yes, but now it's not that kind of war. It's a war of how to win people's hearts, how to bring consciousness out and hold people and to use the process that is there. Okay, and that is the process. When you come to it, it's like when you watch the movies, go to the Great White Father, or whoever the father or the mother is, they're still there. And so long as that snake is running around and choking things. It's our turn, truly, Tony. We are coming. We are compelled to. We're there, and through the work that Koipuna. So this is kind of where it's at with Hawaii, with the warring and everything. Fine, you know, but the Queen, she went for peace, and that's what we need to focus on, to defend the peace, not to make war. Because if we come in the spirit of war, we'll be fighting against people who know not why they are there. We don't need another war in Hawaii. We need peace. And the support of all the people of the indigenous world and all the people, the member states, nations, we need for them to stand up that Hawaii is the place. If you're looking for an example of, where things have happened, 133 years we've been waiting. We've stood down. We've stood down. Okay? Our population has grown. We've taken our cracks like everyone else. Okay? But we're here now. We've connected back. Our migration pattern, according to some of my family records, from 200 BC, we left South America. We are grandfather to the Hopi. The Hopi have acknowledged that. We are grandfather to the Hopi. The migration legends in the shells that are told, Hopi were over there. So we are back now. We have connected back again to Big Turtle Island.
Full circle.
Full circle, yes. The prophecy. The condor and the eagle. It is definitely the time of the condor and the eagle. 2 weeks ago, Tony, we were at DQ. I went to DQ University.
DQ,
Okay.
That's not Dairy Queen.
Right, not the Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
I gotta admit.
DQ University out there by Davis.
Yes.
Davis, California.
We just was there 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
And I brought tarot with me. And as much as one of the lessons there, my brother, I found out last year, I have an older brother. He's 86 years old. And he traveled around the world. He's kind of indigenous transfer specialist of medicines and everything like that. The land is still there. They didn't have, the bookkeeping went south, so you know what happens. But the land is still there and the water is there. What will happen in the future now? How can Alcatraz come up? And all the prayers that came on Alcatraz on this island still need to come up. You just have to add water. Come back again and add water. And this is as much home as is Hawaii. My father was a soldier in the American Army in 1945. He married my mother. In Hawaii is my mother's country, my mother's people. My father, however, is Michoacan. This land is in my heart.
Oh,
I'm home here.
all right, Liko Martin, thank you very much. And Laulani, Teal,
Mahalo,
and
Tony.
my relatives, Liko Martin had mentioned the Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, it was given to a woman, Machado,
Yes.
of Venezuela, but she's kind of a questionable person. I don't know, it puts the credibility of the Nobel Peace Prize
Yeah.
in question when you got people like that. She was nominated by the Secretary of State here, Mario, what's his name, Rubio.
Yes.
So that's a questionable person in itself altogether.
Yes.
But I want to thank you both for sharing, for today, 533 years of indigenous people resistance throughout the Americas, Oceania, and the four directions, my relatives. And this Tony Gonzalez with Eagle and Condor here on the rock. And I hope you're all getting a better understanding that Christopher Columbus was lost, a pitiful, washed onto our shores. We exposed him for the greed and the plunder and the death, the genocide of millions and millions, over 60 million Indian peoples of the Americas lost their lives.
Captain Cook was not a god either.
That was Captain Crook.
Captain Crook
And
was
my
not a
relatives,
god.
and to remind you, 1492 was the beginning of the First World War. That was the First World War beginning, 1492, when all the countries converged on the Americas to steal, to plunder, and to kill. And it's a reminder that Christopher Columbus, because the 47th president is trying to resurrect him and bring that name back. But like I tell you, all across the country, over 11 states, including Hawaii, recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and number is growing. Across the Americas, Mexico, Central and South America, this day is called Dia de la Raza, Day of the People, Day of the Race. They acknowledge that. So Christopher Columbus Day is long gone and buried. Let's keep it that way. He's been exposed. This Tony Gonzalez, once again, Eagle and Condor. Ho ho.
Went to the north end of our valley, and it was like clear up to the top of the mountain. It was like the road ended, right? It was like we were on top of the world. And that is such a great feeling, because up there we found all the animal tracks, we found the food that they was gathering, so they shared with us, so we took some of that and brought it home. Just these beautiful things, and I began to make that connection.
Aho, all my relations. This is Tony Gonzalez with Eagle and Condor. And today, my relatives here are on the rock at Alcatraz Island, October 13, 2025. And we are commemorating, acknowledging 533 years of Indian resistance to colonization here and across the Americas, my relatives. And on this day, beautiful day, I saw here in the crowd, among the thousands here commemorating this day, Casey Camp of the great state of Oklahoma. And Casey Camp, we haven't seen each other since, well, I saw you last April at the United Nations in New York during the 24th session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And well, Casey Camp, would you please introduce yourself and also tell us what your journey has been like since April? And I remember you spoke about the rights of Mother Earth, the rights of nature. If we can talk about that as well, please, Casey Camp.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, so much. I appreciate you. So our meeting at the UN was there at the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. My name is Casey Camp Hornick. I'm a member of the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma. I am a matriarch of a huge and wonderful clan and a drumkeeper for the Women's Society that has been passed down since time immemorial. I'm a survivor of the American Holocaust that's been inflicted on our peoples from the tip of Arctic down to the Antarctic. Our Red Nations people are united in our resistance, and that's what has brought me together with you and the type of work that they call work and we call our honor, our way of being born Red Nations people. Since we saw each other, many things have happened. First of all, I want to acknowledge being here in the homeland of the Ohlone people. I listen to that music being played right now, and it makes me feel very blessed to be here. In the beginning of Alcatraz, my brother Craig Camp was here. Right at the very beginning, the first beginning of this resistance out here. And after that, he and my other brothers, Carter Camp, Dwayne Camp, were all in Wounded Knee as a result of the resistance that was growing during this time of prophecy. And as a younger sister, I was honored to cook for them, to care for them, to have camps in my yards where I brought in all the children, and that was my place as a young woman. As I've matured, Mother Earth has called me to do more. And one of the ways of resistance now is reclaiming our original instructions and our cosmology in terms of a movement called Rights of Nature. I primarily work with movement rights here in the Bay Areas where they're based as a founding board member and as the director of the Indigenous program. I also work with Women Earth and Climate Action Network with Osprey Oriel Lake. But my calling is as the environmental ambassador for the Ponca of Oklahoma. And that is to say that the rights of nature is to acknowledge that we human are just another species and that we belong to nature and we are one with nature, not separate from. And that we have to start re-acknowledging, as our people always have, Tony, you know that well, recognize the corn as a living entity, this sacred mother ocean that surrounds us, and the rivers as living entities, those relatives within them that swim and live as entities, the trees as life-giving entities, the thunder nations, these rains that are coming, are living entities with spirit. And so the Rights of Nature movement has become the largest growing environmental movement on Earth. And I believe it's because of the guidance of those living entities as we acknowledge them again, as we traditionally did, and teach the non-Indigenous people that life cycle includes us, but we're dependent on nature. Nature's not dependent on human beings. Our misbehavior will simply cause us to be removed from the natural cycle. So the blessing has been traveling to various places on Turtle Island primarily, talking to others about how that might be enacted within our indigenous sovereignty, because it's very, very important to have those linked that our sovereignty is food sovereignty, and it is earth sovereignty, it is nature sovereignty, and then humans get to be part of that cycle. Next trip will be to Canada, and then I'm going to Belém, to the UN Conference on Climate Change.
Belém in Brazil.
Brazil.
When that takes place next month.
Next month. I believe I arrive on the 6th, and I'll be there for 2 weeks. Part of the other, one more hat that I wear is as the chair of the Indigenous Council for the Global Alliance of the Rights of Nature.
Oh. And Casey, your responsibility on the rights of nature and Mother Earth, and speaking for environment in general, I thought it was so profound to hear, and people are speaking more and more that rivers and lakes have memories, and how that works. You know, like here in California, about 2-3 years ago during the big floods that was going on, there's a lake in Tulare that has been disappeared because of dams that were constructed and held back that lake, and it dried up. But during the floods, the rains came down and that lake reappeared, and it came to the same place, and it was like rivers, like lakes, have memories. It all came back. And Casey, I thought it was very instrumental. I believe you had mentioned that the Ponca tribe, Oklahoma, had adopted the rights of nature, and I don't know if other tribes are now doing that. Are the other tribes
Yes.
Doing that?
Yes, there are. There are several tribes since that time. There's always been that, but with the conflict with the federal government of the United States trying to disenfranchise us from the land, from the earth, from our ways, from our language, then we have really had to find ways to reestablish, because natural law exists, just what you're talking about. Natural law is going to happen. The lakes will reform. The rivers will flow where they want to. The dams won't always exist. Human law is a fleeting thing. Natural law is forever. So with movement rights, we seek to align natural law with human law. And in doing so, when I was a council member for the Ponca Nation, we literally put down on the paper that the federal government loves so much, in a government-to-government relationship, they have to honor those, a statute, a law within our territory that recognizes the immutable Ponca rights of nature. Because we have to find our way to protect ourselves from the extractive industry there. ConocoPhillips 66 is killing us, the land, the water, the air, the people. And so we also have recognized in a statute form the rights of the rivers that are in our territory and their right to thrive and exist within their natural state. Those things are happening, but let me kind of digress just a bit. Yesterday I got this disturbing news from Ecuador, which is the first major country to recognize rights of nature within its constitution. Now they've got a right-wing, someone who's in favor of the petroleum industry, the mining, because that brings that fake economy, that one that won't last like nature will, so that they can have more money in their bank accounts, right? So there is a fierce attack against the indigenous people in Ecuador right now in order to try to change that constitutional right, because they're winning many court cases down there using rights of nature as as a vehicle to say we don't want mining here, we don't want petroleum here, because we're part of protecting nature, and we are nature itself, protecting itself. And would you mind if I pull something up on my email?
No,
Because
please,
I
go
want to
ahead.
be very, very clear with what's going on there. Their government went in and chopped off the men's hair on Saturday of the indigenous people there. And they're attacking them in vicious, vicious ways. And a young woman had sent me the information yesterday, urgent state violence against the Quichua Otavalo people in Ecuador.
Yes,
Her
please.
name is Sydney, and she said that soldiers forcibly cut the hair of the indigenous Quichua men, calling them that their braids are sacred. And we've had this happen. We know how this feels. American Indian movement, my brothers, my nephews, my grandsons, went all the way to the Supreme Court for the right for young men to keep their hair long. Now this is happening there. Over 112 people have been injured, dozens arbitrarily detained, 12 individuals been tortured in prison. A Quichua community member was killed by a gunshot to the back. His name was Efron Perez. And they're under a state of emergency and heavy militarization. The president of Ecuador has publicly labeled indigenous people as terrorists because he wants to take their land. And they've gotten no response from the UN. They're calling for a special rapporteur to come there, and they're urgently requesting his presence in Otavalo. So I want to, a whole international call to action has been put out, and we here have to carry that in our prayers, bring it to people like you who are capable of getting the word out there. There's a very concentrated attack going on.
I understand that that current president there in Ecuador too is very friendly and an ally of the 47th
Yes.
here in this
yes.
country. So we have to be ever watchful and to that. And I hope you carry that message with you when you go to Belém, Brazil in November for the. Is that the
UN Conference on Climate Change, COPs 30.
30.
I can't remember which one it is.
yes, the Conference of the Parties, COP
Yes.
30 of the climate change. And Casey, you had mentioned your family and your brother, notably Carter Camp, who provided much of the leadership during the Wounded Knee 1973 occupation for, what was that, 71 days or
Right.
or so. And what message do you have for the young people today, Casey, to close the program?
My brother Carter Camp was only 26 at that time.
Oh, my goodness, I
My
didn't
brother, 27. And my brother Craig was in his early 20s, a Vietnam veteran. Now, Craig was here on Alcatraz.
During the occupation when it
That's
began.
That's right. And then they knew, they understood that we're in a critical time. If we want the Red Nations to continue, we have to stand up and fight back constantly, verbally, sometimes physically, always spiritually, always in our ceremony, always carrying the voices of our ancestors in whatever way we can, whatever language we have to use, whatever avenue that we have to take, if it's legal action, if it's occupation, if it's marching, we have to stand up, fight back.
All right. Thank you very much. Casey Camp of the Great Ponca Nation, Oklahoma.
Mike.
Greetings and good morning, good relatives. This is Xochitl Bernadette Moreno, and I'm coming to you from Alcatraz, also known as The Rock, here on Indigenous Peoples Day. I have the honor of being joined by Ashley Rojas, who's the Policy Director of Indigenous Justice. And on this good morning, I was hoping that you can help contextualize some of the work that you have been doing to uplift Indigenous people inside of the UN and some of the other spaces in which you're interacting.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. So Indigenous Justice, under the leadership of Morningstar Gully of Pitt River Nation, we are formal affiliates of the International Indian Treaty Council, and our team has had the honor and privilege of attending UN trainings with International Indian Treaty Council to understand how to organize and how to leverage the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People within those international spaces. And at Indigenous Justice, what we do is, grassroots community organizing and localized, regional and state law and policy work. And what we've been doing is leveraging that international framework, that international United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, state laws, school board policies, local resolutions, etc., to ensure that our young people and our community are being as protected as possible. And one of the ways in which we did this over the last couple of years was supporting young people in their right to tribal regalia at graduation. We had a school board policy that was meant to protect this right for young people. But school boards were over asserting their authority and trying to tell young people what is or is not cultural or what is or is not spiritually significant. They were attempting to be sort of the gatekeeper and to say that they had to validate for young people their indigeneity. And we said that this is coercion, this is ongoing attempts at erasure, that this is indicative of ongoing policies that are intended to separate a young person from their family and culture. And so what we did was leverage that United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, federal laws like the American Indian Freedom of Religion Act, state laws in California relating to civil rights, and as well as school board policies that are protecting the mental the mental health and well-being of our young people. And so leveraging all of these frameworks, we've been able to advance a policy in California, AB 1369, which reinforces the rights of young people, families, and tribal communities to be the sole authorities on what is and isn't culturally significant. So now it's up to a young person and their family and their tribe or community to affirm their own identities and to not seek approval from outside peoples about what is or is not a part of their Indigenous identity.
Thank you for breaking it down in that way, because we hear about the rights of Indigenous people in terms of the UN framework, and it can seem like a very far away thing, and we don't understand how this legislation actually affects people in their communities and in their homes. Can you give a few other examples of what that work looks like and the ways that this legislation, this law, this large international framework can be applied in people's communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, over the last couple of years, we've run a youth program called Strong, Siblings Taking Responsibility for Our Native Generations. And this is a culturally rooted program meant to build up a young person's understanding and context of the systems and structures that are taking advantage, right, of what to us is relatives and to them is resources. And so this might be our culture, this might be our water, this might be our land. And what we do is we teach young people these frameworks, everything from the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights all the way on down to local policies and laws, school board policies, etc., and help them develop interventions or frameworks to argue for their rights to protect these sites, to their relationships to this water, to their inherent rights to gather, their sacred sacred medicines on their ancestral lands, their inherent rights to protect the burial grounds of their ancestors, their inherent rights to be Indigenous young people. And young people are then able to examine their experiences, the world around them, and say, okay, I'm feeling friction here, or there's a problem here, or I'm getting pushed back here, or I haven't had access to, my ancestral lands in I don't know how long. And then we develop solutions. We say, who is the policymaker, the legislator, the decision maker, the stakeholder who's in charge of that, right? Who's holding the power around that decision? And we, with young people, craft solutions and prepare them to do that advocacy. So it's the power building starts with bringing young people to these sacred sites, bringing young people to their communities, connecting them with elders, cultural bearers, spiritual leaders, so that they can understand their inherent connection to these places, and the fights that have been fought to protect and preserve them, and then invite these young people to take up these fights. Not just because we have to always be protecting and defending, but because we have the right to live. And at Indigenous Justice, Morningstar says that her hope, her prayer, right, is that everybody gets to live well and in the Indian way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, to that. This next question is about what's in the pipeline right now. What are some of the policies and legislations that are important for us to be keeping an eye on and having an understanding around?
There was a really unfortunate policy that just passed that actually censors discussion on Palestinian people, Palestinian genocide, in California state education. This is frightening because it censors the existence and the experience of Indigenous peoples internationally. And we know that threats, settler colonial threats to any Indigenous peoples are threats to all Indigenous peoples. And it's really important that we understand the way that our government disguises these efforts and what they really mean, right? This isn't about anti-Semitism. We love all people, but this is about honoring the true life and dignity of Palestinian people, that they deserve to be recognized, they deserve to be seen, and they deserve to be visible. And our young people deserve to learn the truth in education about the complexities of the world that they will inherit.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so important that we understand what global solidarity means for all of us. Can you just leave us with maybe a little highlight, something that we might not know about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and what it means, really? Something that our listeners might not be aware of.
I really want to thank Andrea Carmen, the Executive Director of the International Indian Treaty Council, because she signed this to me when I was in my training to learn about, and it was CEDAW Article 39, which is a really beautiful article that reaffirms Indigenous women's rights to free and prior informed consent when it comes to their traditional homelands and their rights to gather food, fibers, and medicines, and the way in which that impacts their economic well-being, their spiritual well-being, their physical well-being. And it is a really powerful tool that we have at our ready, that our elders have fought for. When we're talking about the UN, folks like Rochelle, folks like Morningstar, folks like Andrea have fought for every single word, and they all matter. And so the more that we read them, that we understand them, and that we teach them to our young people, the more that we can actually pick up this work that has been created, these tools that have been created for us, and leverage them in our communities. And so last year, when we were supporting the fight for Satitla in Pitt River to protect that sacred mountain and those sacred grounds, we educated the young people on that law, on CEDAW Article 39, that they have this inherent right to these lands lands, to these waters, to these plants, to these medicines, and that they can assert those rights as tribal peoples, as tribal young people, as tribal women, that their relationship to this land is inextricable, and that they have not only a sacred responsibility to protect it, but an inherent right to be in unison, to work together with it. And so it's about understanding that those words are more than words on paper, that those are tools that our elders, some of which now our ancestors have blessed us with, and that we can carry those forward and that we can apply them. They're not, decorative words to be sitting on a bookshelf. It's not a declaration to, just frame on your wall. Like, you have to read it, you have to break it down, and you have to see how it applies to your everyday life. Where in your environment can you apply this? Where can you assert these rights?
Thank you for illuminating that for us. Are there any last words or messages that you'd like to share with our audience?
I'm really proud and thankful for those words.
We're supporting an ongoing fight for justice for Douglas Stankiewicz. Douglas Stankiewicz goes by Chief. You can learn more at justiceforchief.com. Douglas was wrongfully incarcerated as a teenager in Fresno County with a judicial system that has a pattern and practice of racial violence against Indigenous peoples, not just discrimination, but of overt violence and extremism. And what we know is that for 47 years, Douglas has fought while incarcerated to protect his rights as a Native man, to keep his hair long, to practice his culture, to engage in his spirituality. And he has affirmed his innocence, and his legal team has used every mechanism available. And recently, what was made available because of the passage of the Racial Justice Act is an attempt for his legal team to provide the evidence to the Fresno County courts that there was racial bias in his prosecutorial process. We've listened to this evidence, we've seen it delivered, and for some reason there is still a delay in the local courts. Recently, the judge decided to stay the case and let it be for the next judge to decide. And that was after about 15, 20 years of hearing this case, which is just another example of bias and delay in justice. Douglas was incarcerated as a teenager after experiencing family separation, after experiencing this was pre-ICWA, so he was he was fostered out of his home. He experienced a lot of generational violence and trauma, and there were no resources or supports for young people, Native men, at this time. It was just sort of lock them up. And recently, Douglas was moved to the California Men's Colony, where a Catholic priest was forcing him and other Native men to attend Catholic Mass and to sit in the chapel there, and keeping them away from Indigenous practices, sweats, medicines, and this is spiritual violence. This is a violation of his international rights as an Indigenous man. These are violations of his human rights, and so it's important that we understand that all of our relatives are deserving of dignity. All of our young people matter, and that we have to stay vigilant and offer our support to protect and defend relatives inside these institutions, and for those of us outside these institutions.
Thank you so much for sharing this important message, and we'll certainly keep our ear to the ground to learn more about Justice for Chief. And how can people stay connected to your work?
Yeah, so indigenousjustice.org is our website. Indigenous_justice on Instagram, Indigenous Justice on Facebook. You can always send us a DM. You can email us at info@indigenousjustice.org, and that'll get right to us. Our team is small, but mighty, and so any communication channel will get right to us.
Thank you so much for your time. This is Xochitl Bernadette Moreno. Keep it locked. Good morning, good relatives. My name is Xochitl Bernadette Moreno, and I'm coming to you today from Alcatraz, or The Rock, here with Radio Free Alcatraz and the Eagle and Condor. I just would like to first take the opportunity to thank Creator for this beautiful day. And this good morning, and the ability to sit in the presence of someone so special. So thank you very much, Great Grandmother Mary Lyons, for taking the time to speak with us and all of our listeners on this good morning. If you may, would you please just salute all of our listening audience?
Chimi Guts for the EandC10182025. That is my given name, and that is Second Water Woman. I've been in this, they say movement, I always say this is a passage that we have to keep clear and start breaking through the brushes in the future for all the young people. And we also have to keep the memory of our ancestors alive, because what happens is we talk about the 7 generations, and all the teachings that goes along with that is real, no matter who's telling it, how it is, or what is. But for us, I'm a Dewan, that's my religion. So to the audience out there, I think this is really, really important. It's because the 7 generations to me, being Anishinaabe Ojibwe, from northern Minnesota up on North Turtle Island, is that I sat with my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. Now I sit with my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great-granddaughter. You see, there's 3 here and 3 there. My great-granddaughter will know the stories and the memories of my great-grandmother. So I hold the balance. It's my responsibility within those 7 generations to keep that memory link together. So it's up to you when you think you don't matter or nobody's paying attention to any one of you. You do matter, because your ancestors are counting on you. It doesn't matter in this world of what things are going on. If you hold your space, stand in your space, and believe what your ancestors have taught you as they're resting inside you, they're asleep, and as they start to awaken, you will start feeling that strength and the energy of moving through this time. Remember, you're only in a space that you come as a student, walk as a student, and you leave as a student. It's not our jobs to be in other people's spaces, to be fighting or arguing with somebody else, because what we're doing is we're cutting off our own learning and our own happiness for ourselves. There's so much on this planet that Mother Earth said, I am your library, study me. All the skies and stuff, it says, I'm your vision, I'm your hope. The air that you breathe in you that moves forward in this stuff. You can be the painting of your own creation that you walk forward in. It's up to you what you want, but while you're in this time here, you have to move in your space, because what is happening now is there's too many people going into other spaces where they don't belong. I hope that makes sense to your audience, but you gotta believe in yourself. You gotta hold the respect for your ancestors, good or bad or whatever it may be, because that holds, anger gives you strength, and love keeps that balance in you as an individual. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Grandmother. I appreciate you presencing how the technology and practice of keeping the 7 generation wisdom alive, and the responsibility that we hold to those that have come before and those that are coming in front of us. Today is referred to as Indigenous Peoples Day. Can you talk to our audience about what it means to be Indigenous in 2025?
Some people think it's kind of difficult to really, how does that resonate with you? Indigenous Peoples Day is every day with every breath, from the time of conception until your departure. When I say I'm a Dewan, it's from the time that seed was planted in my mother's womb till the day I exit back to the stars. So when we really talk about, especially what's happening today with artificial intelligence, I have to really remind my kids in that that device has no heartbeat. It just has no heartbeat. So when we're talking about today is no different than the day 500-600 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We were gifted with such an organic life. But it's up to us that we have to make sure that we know that knowledge within those seeds in the earth that feeds us, keeping the water clean, that, nourishes with us, because that water has relationship to everything. Can you imagine a water coming and they see destruction and all the trees that were pulled up, all the relatives gone, so they might not have a reason to come back there. So then the waters and the stuff start to dry up. The land starts turning deserty. It's just, this is common sense. It's not such a science as they say today. And I want you to keep in mind of that. It's a great question, but Indigenous Peoples Day is taking care of this body, because this plant here, we're all water protectors because it holds such a quantity of water. But we have to keep this container pure because the libraries of our ancestors in them. So every day, be proud of who you are, smile. I work with foster care kids that are adopted, kids that are taken away, kids, that end up going to prisons, in the homeless shelters and stuff, and they think they're not wanted. But you have to keep in mind, they're probably living the organic way of life as their ancestors. Because they don't have freedom of appeals, they can go here. They still have a slight memory that's going on within them. But they are, the light to be remind us and have to be grateful of what we have. So Indigenous People Day, to each person, is going to be what they experience. It's not a day of greed, it's a day of giving and reminding yourself you are the next page of those books that your ancestors passed on.
Here's to those many pages. I'd like to ask you now about the concept of resilience. I think there's a lot that we can be concerned and fearful about in today's world. However, we as Indigenous people have a great body of knowledge of what it means to be resilient. And I was wondering if you could speak to this concept of resilience and how we can embody it in these challenging times that we find ourselves living in.
Yeah. Our relative, the southern regions, they talk about it, but the Pacific Islanders and our relative Momoa, Jason Momoa, just brought chiefs of war. There's always, did they do it right? Didn't they do it right? And they'll have these conversations, just like any other place. They'll have these conversations. They'll criticize, their own fellow relative for doing something wrong. But they use all that energy, when they could be helping and saying, okay, I want to learn this, or sharing and saying, yeah, this is what my ancestors did. But sometimes bringing the truths of who we are out, I don't know if anybody has ever seen it, but, I kept on watching it, and I was forced into a situation that I had to jump because I'm not really a TV watcher, but I watched it. But I had to watch it one right after the next, so I didn't watch it until that first season was done. And I knew people that acted in there, so that was my first thing, was someone look for them. But what I got entranced with is the knowledge that's brought forth. Just like listening in the background, that rhythm of who we are, it's something very, very special. We can talk about lithium mines and this stuff, but our lithium mines is just what you're hearing in the background. The rattle shaking, the drum, the heartbeat and this stuff and that there. We have to keep in mind, we have to know who we are as a priority and not give so much energy into the silliness. Because when you give so much energy into that silliness, you don't know what's happening behind that silliness that's behind you, that's going to shake your world. So never ever run into a predator or a perpetrator, and it doesn't necessarily mean human and human. It could be on product or product, ripping up Mother's Earth or whatever it may be. You just have to sit in your time here and just pay attention and look around. Because one thing I can just bring up to you, during that COVID, every Indigenous community has gone through some theme of COVID. We've gone through smallpox and blankets, and you can go on and on of what they did trying to eliminate us for the land, right? And then they don't even know how to take care of it. That's just silly to me. They're still trying to destroy a lot of the wetlands, a lot of the wells and all of this stuff in that there, the fishing out there. But yet I can still go at another part of this country or even outside these lands and that there and be invited to a restaurant. And it's phenomenally expensive. And on the menu is my homelands of my fish. So I have to remind those chefs, if you don't stand with us on that, you're not going to have the food on this plate to be serving people. So this is how we're connected. So I think the importance is when we look at each other, when we're sitting here, we have to stay away from that tree that has that color from white to black. We have to stop saying that individual color. We have to start going in and identify what upsets me about what is going on. It's not so much as that individual's doing, but what upsets me about it is what is going on. Take ownership of what you see is the problem, but also come back. My father used to say, if you have a problem, don't come to the table with me unless you have first solutions, because you're wasting my time. I don't like to hear, just talk where there's no movement in it. And you shouldn't be angry, because that anger has a lot of energy to start moving forward in these solution movements and that there. Does that make sense?
That does. I like this solution-oriented mindset, and also the reminder to focus on ourselves, and to not focus on all of the distraction and the problem, but to see our role in it and our place.
Oh yeah, the power in people is unique. They have this, on Friday, don't shop at this one all around the world. I mean, you wouldn't believe how it can rattle and shut down the ones that we're trying to remind them of their silliness. We can do that. And even like I said, we were talking through COVID and that there. Everybody was trying to clean out the food shelves and this stuff. And a lot of the food here in the United States here alone, if you look on the labels, don't even come from here. And so if you don't know about the seeds and your land, knowing how to garden, when I go home and out there, they never lived in that silliness. They never had to worry about toilet paper. They knew how to use or whatever it is. And when you run and you hide in out there and you don't have those solutions, then that's why I say, it's a time to just kick back, and you better start waking up and thinking about your ancestors, because you have instructions in you for survival. We lived thousands upon thousands of worlds without canned food, without toilet paper, without this massive medicine. Because like I said, I tell people, we're nothing but a product line of we're testing. They're testing all this crap on us. And I can't understand it too, why a lot of times they're killing off who is providing the money for them. So that's why I see it's silliness. So pay attention to yourself in your own space. Pay attention to your own fellow person. Even our neighborhoods, we shouldn't have to be so fearful to going into our own neighborhoods that another one of our relatives is going to harm us. You see how well they taught us? They no longer need the wars of what came to break us apart. They taught us so well we do it ourselves. So it's time to wake up and say, you know what? I want to live today. I don't want to be in fear. Because that fear was the instruction of that colonial theft and that brutal beast of greed. So, like you say, even I always tell my children in this stuff, I won't talk to you if you're using, because I don't know where your spirit is. I'm speaking to a darkness. You need to stay away from me. And so that darkness will put you to sleep and will do crazy things to your blanket. And so you have to protect your blanket in order, if you want to remain in this time here on planet Earth. Your spirit has to be there, because that's just like this light here. That's the switch of energy of our ancestors that will keep us going. Because like I keep saying, we're caretakers. We had this agreement, Mother Earth and Father Sky. She'll take care of us as long as we take care of her. Planet is going to go on. Look, what that grandiose thing, we're killing the planet. No, we're killing the sources that she had gifted us to say, okay, behave yourselves, take care of yourselves, be a good caretaker, and here's the fruits of labor that I'm going to present to you. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. That hits home really well. Take care of your blanket. Yeah. In closing, grandmother, I'd like us, if you were able to share something about your people and the land that you come from, something that our listeners might not know, that you would like to impart with them.
From up in my territories and this stuff, we have the 7 grandfather teachings. We always say 7 grandmothers teachings because we like to have that balance, right? And it's the simplest things is, I'm an Anishinaabe or Ojibwe. That's all I am. My father was born in 1889. My grandmother was 52 when she had him. And her mother was in her 50s. So I only got those generation teachings from the late 1700s. We have closed societies because we don't want to bring it out in our Madewan lodges and this. But we also, we have... All our people are from the East. My father and them originally came from the East, from Haudenosaunee, Mohawk, and moving forward. And of course, we always laugh about it. Those darn people fell in love with this person, and fell in love with their creed, fell in love with their Odawa and this stuff. And this is how I resulted. I became all Anishinaabe. That means people of the land. And so I'm so proud of our lands. I come from a source of 10,000 lakes. I come from where, the food grows above the water on Manoma and our wild rice. I come from the pools of plenty in our many, many lakes and this stuff of the walleye. And we're so gifted up there. But yeah, I'm not only just my people, we also too reside on the territories of the Dakota. We're on their lands that they caretake from that push that was coming over. So when I have to say, within my territories of my tribal systems, I always have to include our other relatives on there, because it's who we are as people.
And am I mistaken that Oren Lyons is connected to your family line?
Well, everybody always just says that Chief Oren Lyons is, from the Haudenosaunee and this stuff. And we always have, probably within the lineage line, we're connected, because, Lyons really isn't our given name. Passages, I also have a book called Wisdom Lessons, and in the beginning of there, kind of gives history about the beginning and that there. And, He's such an honorable person. He's got such knowledge. We were just here last year at the gathering, and I was hoping he'd be here. But, his wisdom has got power, and he's I don't know. He is such a great elder that I am blessed. And like I always say, we're all relatives. So, yeah. But as for like first cousins and this stuff, if people want to know it within the colonial way, no. Within our indigenous ways, he is my brother.
Oh. And grandmother, in closing, can you just send a blessing out for those that are connecting with us in this moment? Just any words of blessing.
As we talked about the 4 elements, the water, the air, the fire, and the earth, be mindful. Everything, every person, sky animals, water animals, the plants, everything depend on those 4 elements. Everything. We have no time for discrimination or whatever it is, because those 4 elements that we have that keeps us all alive within this planet shows no prejudice. So let's not grab onto our prejudice and use it as anger for what's something that is hurting inside of us. And you always have to remember, when you meet a very, very angry person, you see them Don't attack them with hate. Attack them with love and move around them. And that's what we have to do. Because if you feed that darkness with anger, then you become the darkness. Miigwech.
Tlaskokamati, thank you so much, Miigwech, grandmother. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and sharing some of your wisdom and some of your love through your words. So I wish you a safe return to your home and many blessings for all of those in your family, and may you travel well, may you travel with love.
Thank you.
Thank you.